Guys, we are starting our unit on geometry. You have a notes page, so make sure that you go ahead and follow along as we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about, we're starting off with area. So area is just the amount of surface that a figure covers. Okay, it's just we're looking at just two-dimensional shapes. So it has a length and a width to it. So for example, if I were to put a piece of paper on your desk, that space that it covers on your desk, that is the area. Okay, so because we're looking at two-dimensional shapes, just length and width, your area or your answer is always going to be squared. So that's like if you were looking at like how much carpet to put in your house, your answer would be in square yards or square feet. Okay, and that's how you write it. So we write it feet squared, but when we say it, we actually say square feet. Okay, kind of weird, but there you go. All right, so let's look at the first thing. The first thing we're going to look at is the area of a rectangle. So first of all, let's just make sure you know what a rectangle is. You don't have to write this part what a rectangle is, but just make sure that you're aware that the characteristics of a rectangle is that it has four sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's a quadrilateral. Two of the sides are parallel, so this side and this side are parallel, and this side and this side are parallel. Okay, so two pairs of parallel lines, and it also has four right angles. Okay, four right angles. Okay, so that's a rectangle. Now, the difference between a rectangle and a square, the only difference then is that a square would also have four equal sides. Okay, a square would also have four equal sides. Okay, so the area of a rectangle or a square is we're just looking at length and width. So the area is length times width, length times width. So make sure and write that. Area is length times width. Okay. So I sometimes just write L times W, so LW, okay? If you want to put the dot in the middle to make sure that you know that that's multiplication, that's fine, okay? All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to find the area of each of these. You may use a calculator, however, you need to write down what you're doing. So in this case, length times width, that's 5 times 5 equals 25. Now, remember, you have to use your units. So that's inches squared. So we would say that 24 square inches. All right, pause the video and do those two problems. All right, check your answers. Okay, again, make sure that your units are there, okay? Now, because we're just multiplying length times width, it doesn't really matter which one you do. That's the commutative property. Width times length doesn't matter. It's just those two different lengths and width there, okay? All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is a parallelogram. So a parallelogram, again, it's four sides, but it has two pair of parallel lines. It does not have right angles. It does not have right angles. If you'll notice, it kind of looks like to me like a slanted rectangle, okay? Now, the reason for this one, it is actually, if I were to just cut this little piece off of here, it just forms, again, a rectangle. So it's just length times width, okay? However, because this one doesn't have four equal sides, we actually call this a base and a height. This is going to be the base. Let's see, let me write that. This is my base, and this is the height of my parallelogram. So it's going to be base times height. And just know that the base is the bottom here, and the height is always going to be, either of these are the base. You can see either of those are base. The height is going to be from your base to your base, from your base to your base. Sometimes they might show the height over here. They might have a dotted line, and they might show the height over here. Okay, they might say that that's the height right there, and that's fine. Okay. All right, so let's do a couple of these. So this is just base times height. Okay, so if I look at this one, I've got my base and my height. So all I'm going to do is area. I should have written this on the first one. Area equals the base times the height equals, okay, and then that would be 91. And look at my units, inches squared. Okay, base times height. Okay, pause the video and go ahead and do those two problems. All right, go ahead and check your answers. All right, so both of those were pretty easy. They're just length times width or base times height. Okay, pretty easy. All right, let's move on to triangles. Okay, so what do we know about a triangle? First of all, we know a triangle is 3 sides, and what we've been dealing with are all quadrilaterals so far. But if you were to look at this, if I were to take this rectangle and cut it in half, doesn't that just form 2 triangles? Doesn't it just form 2 triangles? Okay. So if I were to look at this, let's just say that this was 6, oops, let's just say that this is 6 and this is 4. That's my length and width of this. So the area of the whole thing would be 6 times 4, which would be 24. But I only want this triangle. So wouldn't that just be half of what 24 is? So wouldn't that just be 12? And then this triangle would be 12 as well? Okay. And if I were looking at this parallelogram, and I told you that this was 8 and this was 2, the height was 2, that means that the whole parallelogram, the area would have been 16. So if I just want half of it, that triangle would be 8, and that triangle would be 8, the area. Okay? So then that means my triangle formula is just going to be the base times the height divide by 2. Base times height divide by 2. Sometimes they're going to actually write it like this, which means 1/2 of the base and the height. But kind of what we've been talking about before, when you take a half of something, when you multiply something by a half, that is the same as dividing by 2. I actually prefer to look at this formula, and I think it's easier for you all. So this might be the formula that you want to write down on your formula sheet. However, please be aware that like on standardized tests or anything like that, they will show this one. You just need to know that multiplying by a half and dividing by 2 is the same thing, okay? Also, let's make sure that we understand that the height of my triangle is always from the base of the triangle up to the top, okay? It is the distance from the base to the top, okay? So all of these are showing height. So this is the height of my triangle. This shows the height. This one right in the middle, they might have a dotted line. That's from the base to the top. That's my height. Also over here, that dotted line on the outside, this is still the height from the base to the top. So that would also be considered my height, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and try an example, all right? Oh, I've got decimals here. So you can use calculators again, but you just need to make sure and write down your how you're doing it, okay? So let's write this one down. So the area equals the base times the height. If you want to put parentheses around that, you can. And then divide by 2. Divide that answer by 2. If you're using a calculator, make sure you put an equal sign between that 2. Make sure you put an equal sign, okay? All right, so that one should have been 19.6875 square inches. Again, anytime we're dealing with area, you should have squared units, okay? All right, go ahead and pause the video and do those 2. All right, go ahead and check your answers there, okay? All right, so those were 3 pretty easy ones, okay? The next one we're gonna talk about is a trapezoid, which is not as easy, okay? It's just a little bit more work to it, but it's not hard when you follow formulas. When you follow formulas, you're just plugging in numbers, okay? So let's first make sure that you understand what a trapezoid is, okay? A trapezoid is different from the parallelogram and the rectangle because it only has one side of parallel lines. It is still a quadrilateral, so it still has 4 sides, so it's a quadrilateral, but it only has one pair of parallel lines. So this is my parallel lines. Oops, sorry. Oops. Right. So these are my parallel lines. This one and this one are my parallel lines. Those parallel lines form your bases. Okay, that's important to know. Your parallel lines, remember, parallel lines are lines that will never touch. These lines at some point will touch. Okay, so this one and this one are my parallel lines. So these are called my bases. Okay, these are my bases. Okay, Since I have two of them, I might want to call this one base 1 and base 2 because there are two of them, okay? The other thing I need to know is the height of the trapezoid, the height, which again is from the distance from the base to the base. So this is my height. Oops, sorry, bad dotted line there. Let me make that a little bit better. Let's go. Still not good, but anyway, so that's my height, okay? So those things are important to know, okay? All right, so here is my visual models here, okay? So that's what you need to know, okay? You don't need to write anything down yet. We're gonna watch a video. This video will show you a little bit better the visual model. Now, once we see it, we'll get the formula, but I want you to see it visually first. Okay, let's see. Oh.
Here is my trapezoid. It's got four sides. It's a quadrilateral, like I said earlier, and it has. Here is my trapezoid. It's got four sides. It's a quadrilateral, like I said earlier, and it has exactly one pair of parallel sides. These little arrows here mean that this side and this side are parallel with each other. So now let's label. Your parallel sides, you're always going to call those bases. And it doesn't matter which one you label which, but this top one, I'm going to call that B1 for base number 1, and this bottom for base number 2. Remember, your bases are always going to be those parallel sides. So it doesn't matter if this is flipped up or rotated over. Wherever your parallel sides are, those are going to be your bases. And I could call this B2 and this one B1. It doesn't really matter. Then the distance between your bases right here is going to be your height. Okay, and same thing, even if it's kind of rotated a little bit and might not look like a typical height, the distance between your parallel sides will be your height. Okay, so look for that. And it's always going to be, your height is always going to be perpendicular, right? That's what that means, to your bases. Now that we have my trapezoid kind of labeled, let's look at where the formula came from. If I draw a little line here from the midpoint on this side all the way up to here and cut this little piece off and rotate it and then slide it down, well, now I've made one big triangle. Okay, and notice the area didn't change. I still have the same amount of red, right? I just cut a little piece off and moved it. That's all I did, rotate it and then moved it down. So the area hasn't changed from my original trapezoid. So now it's just a triangle. And to find the area of a triangle, we know it's just base times height divided by 2. Well, what is my base? Well, my base is just going to be my original B1 plus my original B2. If I add those together, that will be the base of this triangle. The height is still this height. Okay. So to find the area of this triangle, I would do B1 plus B2 times the height and then divide all of that by 2 because it's a triangle. So with that in mind, here are the formulas for area of a trapezoid. You can either think of it this way, right? B1 plus B2 times that by the height and then 1/2 of that. Or you can think of it as this way. Again, B1 plus B2 in parentheses, do that first, times your height and then divide all that by 2. They're the same formulas, just written different ways. So
all right, so that was kind of telling you the visual model. Now, some of you might be saying, I don't understand what you're saying at all. So let's just look at the formula. So I want you to make sure that you write down this formula, okay? Base 1, so the area equals, make sure you write this on your thing, base 1 plus base 2, and this little subscript down here tells you the different bases. Again, it doesn't matter which one you think is the bases, okay? This is just your parallel lines. So base 1 plus base 2, add them first, hit equals, then times your height, hit equals, divide by 2, okay? So that's your trapezoid. Now, you're just plugging in the problems here. So I'm going to do one with you, okay? So this is on your paper, so I'm going to do this one with you. So the base 1 plus base 2. Remember, my bases are my parallel lines. So these are my parallel lines. So area equals 9 plus 5 parentheses, times the height here's given here, times my height, divide by 2, okay? So let's go ahead and put that in our calculator. So 9 plus 5, that's 14, times 8, divide by 2. So 14 times 8 is 112, then divide by 2, and that gives me 56. So the area equals 56, go back to my units, centimeters squared. So 56 square centimeters. Use the formula. You're just plugging things in. You're just plugging them in, okay? So I want you to try 2 and 3. I want you to try 2 and 3. Write it out like I did. Then you can use your calculator. Pause the video and come back when you have your answers. All right, check your answers. Make sure those units are written down, okay? This one is the one that just requires the most. It's not like it's hard, it just requires a little bit more work. The biggest thing is make sure that you are adding your bases. You don't multiply your bases, you add your bases, okay? Add your bases together, then multiply by the height, then divide by 2, okay? All right, so here is your exit slip on the back of your paper. Turn your paper over, and I want you to do these 6 problems. The very first thing you need to do, number 1, is you need to look and decide what shape it is. Once you know the shape, then you follow the formula. You have to know the shape first though, okay? So figure out the shape first, then follow the formula. All right, I'll be looking to see this tomorrow. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you talk to me. All right, have a great day. Make sure all of your notes page is complete, okay? All the formulas. All right, have a great day.